Hi everybody, it's Ron again. It's the show with Ron, and I was trying to show you some sunset here at the beach. It's awfully bright. You won't have to look at my face, which is, I suppose, a positive. Uh, while we look at the news from Super Tuesday today, now we look at the news to try to put some perspective into it uh, and try to understand what's really being said, what's really being said to us. And here we have, first off at the top, we have one of these true blue stories that comes out very often at election season. I think this is a phenomenon of the 21st century. Every time a Republican president has uh, run for office, Bush, and so on, and Trump particularly, one of the earliest forms of what they now call virtue signaling were celebrities saying that if a certain person was elected, they would have to leave the country. And I don't believe anyone ever followed up on that, but it always made news. And now, by this point, this phenomenon has spread to the right as well, where you have maybe people in Texas saying that if Biden, got mosquitoes all over here, that if Biden is elected, they will have to leave. In this case, because of the Democrats' kind of new open border policy, we have a situation where maybe Texans, maybe Floridians believe that it's an attempt to change the demographic nature of their state by attracting and allowing illegal immigrants just to come in and then giving them all the goodies. Uh, of course, others, that's an opinion. For some reason, in social media, you're not even allowed to express. And some people would say that those illegal immigrants, those many south of the border people, tend to be more conservative than they do Democrats. This whole sort of conspiracy theory has been around for probably 40 years, and so here we have Texas. Texas always has accounted themselves an independent republic that joined up with the United States, and they could leave any time. I remember some Texans telling me something about it's in their constitution. They can decide to secede at any time they want to. But anyway, to keep this in context, this is a perennial election year. Virtue signaling, in the past by the left, now it's by the right, to show how dire the circumstances are, and they are willing to leave, ready to leave. Nikki Haley finally out. Didn't seem like she really ever had a chance. The media and lots of people in the Republican Party who don't like Trump certainly would have hoped she could have done something to be the candidate instead of Trump. But Trump, as always expected, is going to be the nominee and is going to run against Biden in a rematch of the last election. I think that's the first time we've had a rematch since the 50s. It escapes me who it was, but that often doesn't happen. Often somebody who loses is considered a spent force, and they're not going to run again, especially since the president is limited to 2 terms. So they're instantly a lame duck the second time around. I'm sure Trump is planning for that eventuality, and that's why others are saying he's going to take over and be president forever, even though he's super old. So we'll see. What else do we have here? Reagan GOP is no more. This is how Nikki Haley represented the way the Republican Party was before Trump came in and sort of returned it to its more isolationist roots. We have, Nikki Haley being pragmatic, that is, trying to gain the reasonable center. This is of voters, the center bloc, not the far right or the far left. And this is a phenomenon that went on in the Reagan administration, the following the first Bush, and certainly the Clintons perfected that. The reasonable center. So conservatives said, "Oh, we're a kinder, gentler conservative. This is to move to the center." And in the Clinton era, we had the electoral concept of the soccer moms, the more affluent, upscale people who would be seen maybe as voting Republican, but who would be amenable to kinder, gentle liberalism that the Clintons were peddling. And it also explains in this article, we have the idea of the change in the Republican Party from being internationalists and hawks. That is, they want to get involved in the foreign wars and make sure that things turn out in the U.S.'s favor overseas, and they set up the world chess pieces the way the U.S. wants it, and hopefully arcing towards democracy and free markets, although even today that's not the case. The West's allies are countries that need to be allies, like Saudi Arabia, this sort of thing. And what Trump has done is returned the party to its pre-World War II isolationist roots that say, we're over here in the U.S., let the Europeans fight their wars, we don't want to pay for them anymore. And there's a case to be made for that. The U.S. is deeply in debt, $34 trillion, going up another trillion every 100 days. And more than that, it's really the liberals who have brought about this change in Republican thought during the second George Bush administration, George W. Bush. He launched two ultimately disastrous wars, both in Afghanistan and Iraq. And there was a constant drumbeat in the media that these wars are too expensive, and George W. Bush didn't seek approval from international organizations. He's a war criminal who's going to be pulled before the Hague, and wars are bad because innocent people might get killed. And I think after a while, the right wing started to say, maybe that's true. And then when they saw the next president come in, a Democrat, elected as maybe a knee-jerk reaction to George W. Bush, he also started up a horrible, disastrous war in Libya. The media was sort of quiet on that, but that's a whole nother story. The idea is that the American public has been conditioned now to reject foreign wars. And now that the U.S. has become, I believe, still the largest oil producer in the world, I don't think they're the largest exporter, but the largest producer through the magic of fracking, the miracle of fracking. Thank God for fracking, I guess. Because of that, the strategic importance of certain areas where we would have our wars or pay for wars, the Middle East, has started to reduce. So this is both a change in history and a change in public mindset to accepting overseas wars, and it's changed the party. So a person like Nikki Haley, who said all the right things, was the right kind of moral person that the Republicans always said they wanted. Now she's met with the yawns, and the enthusiasm is going to Trump. There's some beach dogs making a fuss over here. we got the uncommitted, racks up 45,000 votes in Minnesota. Minnesota's a place where they've allowed tons and tons of immigrants to create communities there, and this is part of America. However, the kind of the bias of those areas is against Israel and for groups, like the Palestinians and Hamas. And this there was a large uncommitted vote we see there. It that that's, this is kind of to show the protest vote for Biden against Biden's policy of supporting what's going on with Israel and Hamas. Now, of course, people will say, "Oh, well, now he's criticizing Israel, and now he's dropping aid to Hamas." But this is a difficulty of a current president who has policies and to undertake. I mean, because there are lots of compromises that have to be made, and you end up playing both sides of the fence. Same thing on immigration. They have years of kind of open borders, unprecedented situation in the U.S. Under the Biden administration, and then he says, "Oh, well, we'll close the borders. Maybe we'll even make the wall like Trump wants." It's a difficult road, the compromises you have to make when you're actually in power. Oh, here we have the Latino, 1 in 5 Latino voters considering switching parties. And I think the bottom line of this is what I was saying before. Even for the last 40 years, one side says, well, they have open borders to change the demographics of a certain state or area. But on the other hand, Latino voters, as they mature within the populace, quite a lot of them tend to be conservatives and vote conservative. So here's this little group of articles about San Francisco. San Francisco votes for drug screening and police surveillance. Probably even a little bit before the George Floyd incident. This is where that guy got, for some reason, the police right on video put their knee on the guy's neck and killed him right on video. That caused a lot of soul searching and consternation and guilt in the American public. And in some of the big cities, I think kind of pandering to voters, they cut down on what was considered a crime, such as like loitering for the intent of prostitution. Now, in many areas, that's not considered a crime, and the police can't do anything. And then other times where you have strong arm robbery, it's not a felony anymore; it's a misdemeanor, which they just give a person a citation and release them in some areas. So. And there were even the people that were saying just disband the police. Well, this has caused chaos in a lot of American cities. And here we have, when you're moving towards elections again, these cities are going to have to tighten up the things. Their law enforcement, or they can have a backlash from voters. And New York City is another place that has gone down the drain, so to speak, becoming very unsafe. And this is American cities are like that. just as the U.S. states are their own little countries, U.S. cities have a to and fro of of regimes where you have tightened things up and then you loosen things up. Famously in the late 90s, with Clinton, a Democrat, super tough on crime, and there were a lot of Republicans elected as mayors of U.S. cities, like Giuliani in New York, and he famously cleaned up New York and made it extremely safe, and there were historically low levels of crime, and then eventually we're saying, well, too many black people in jail, so we need to loosen up all the laws for some reason, right? But this is humanity, and like I say, we have the tide going in and out in terms of how policies are implemented, and here we have an election year, and we got to tighten up again. Here's just another. The centrist Republicans, Manchin, Romney, uh, moving out of politics. They were the kind of the great CEOs, the people now that a lot of Republicans do not like because they are centrist. I wonder, with Trump at his age, and certainly if Trump were elected president again, one of the first questions that would be raised as how deep is his movement that changes the Republican Party, that pushes it right, that pushes the centrist area of voters to the right. Is there another person who can take up the mantle? Is this a movement that's deeper than Trump? And I think so far I don't see that, because we have seen a lot of Trumpites get into the White House, or get into the Congress, into the House of Representatives, and they've all been sort of crazy, rabble-rousing, not ready for prime time politicians who don't seem to have the gravity or the smarts to really deal on a national level. Or an easier way to say it is they often look like fools, and I think that's not just the way that the media portrays them, and certainly the media does like to portray them as fools. X or Twitter, something about that, I never, maybe I'm too old, I never understood why people like to fight each other with one-word sentences all day on Twitter. Scientists closer to reviving mammoths. What could go wrong? I want to see this before I die. Maybe I want to see that there's really aliens in the world, but the other thing is this. I've heard this like from my earliest childhood. We're going to revive the mammoths. There are going to be mammoths walking around. I don't even demand dinosaurs, just mammoths. That's fine. And the concept for this is that, I don't know, it was up until maybe 30,000 years ago, the whole Russian steppes, that whole Siberia area, had a very vibrant natural world with large, medium, and small animals, and lots of trees and things, forests that were very differentiated, and it would have been a kind of a world where the climate was a little more moderate, and that people could have lived there, or early man did. But since early man wiped out all the big animals, it's theorized that caused the collapse, and it has caused the some of the areas where it's sort of like a tundra desert of no trees and very little large wildlife, and that restoring these special animals that were evolved to live there, you could perhaps make that area again more productive, a more productive environment. Kim Jong-un orders heightened war preparations. They always do that in the lead up to either elections or a summit. It's just their statecraft. Doesn't mean someday they might not go nuts, but that's part of the way they communicate. More AI craziness, more stuff about Prince Harry. I'm tired of him. If you read some of the stuff that's going on over there in Haiti, insane. This is it's I don't know, it's beyond a failed state. It's not even a state. It's all just gang members fighting. And the U.S. has this time gotten out of having to go back and clean things up. There is a coalition of Caribbean nations that have peacekeepers in there, but ooh, what a messy situation. A guy has 217 COVID vaccinations. See, that's a person who didn't listen to my channel. See, because if you listen to the regular news, you would have been made hysterical over wearing masks and all of that. And so he really did what he was told, and he got vaccinated a lot. That's like every week. That can't be good for you. Atom bombs in space. I almost feel like it's about time, because it seems like one of those amazing things that mankind created treaties to prevent us from our natural desires to make war on each other. The natural state is war, I think, and it's amazing. Every day we live without war. I hope we can keep it up. There was an article yesterday, and I couldn't get online. I had some net problems, and so I still wanted to. This was on Drudge yesterday, but it's an interesting article about. It was New York Times facing a sustained wave of backlash for their political reporting, and I thought, oh, are they being too negative against the Republicans or something? I guess that shows my bias, or what I think is the bias. But no, it's actually the opposite. It's people, I guess the left or liberals, feeling that the New York Times should come out more strongly and partisanly to say that you shouldn't elect Donald Trump. He is a threat to the nation, etc., etc., and that he is too doddering and insane and racist, etc., etc., and to not be so fair in their reporting, which is interesting, because some of the articles that I had keyed on since I started this channel and would trying to monitor it closely, was this thing that some of these movements do come out of the New York Times, and one of them was the idea of the vibe economy. It's a concept to support the president, the Democrat in power always, where they make up a new word to describe some sort of public disgruntlement. And this was the idea that inflation was not a problem. People may think they pay more for foodstuffs and diapers and Cokes and things, but things are actually better than they ever are before. And they say, well, see, inflation's coming down for some manufactured good, blah, blah, blah. But of course, for regular people and the ground level, it's still quite an issue, and it's been a big change. Reagan slayed inflation in the 80s, and so for 40 years, the lifetime of most people They haven't even dealt with rising prices, and not in the way people did in the 60s and 70s. So this is a big deal. So apparently, and you saw this in the media, a lot of the media decided, well, we need to tell people they're mistaken if they think inflation is a problem. So at least that's what, from my perspective. And then there was also this other article where this is that a sandwich place in the U.S. I've never eaten there, but people swear by it. So $24 for one person, $12.49 for a bacon cheeseburger and Coke, and $5 for small fries. So the people complaining about this, and you know how difficult it would be to be the sitting president, but. I do think Biden does get a little bit of cover from the press, through these concepts of the vibe economy, where they're trying to tell people that they're mistaken if they think they're paying more for things, or they're mistaken if they blame the president for the greatest homelessness rate ever, or for starting more foreign wars or participating in them with paying out money. Um, Again, I think it's easy to be cynical about these things. Say foreign wars, it probably is the best thing that the United States pays for these things, or sometimes gets involved to make sure the world turns out the way we need it to turn out, or that we'd like it to turn out, or we might find ourselves in a sticky situation. But I just felt that this article was quite fascinating, because it did point up some of my own bias, where I was looking at the media and how they did support Biden often, and I think they did. But there are a lot of people from a completely different perspective who are looking at terror at the media, for the exactly opposite reason, for saying how come they are not attacking Trump more and supporting Biden more. I guess it also shows how the pretense of being objective or unbiased has kind of gone out the window in these polarizing times. And I wrote a book, here it is.
Young people find their dreams and failures in Bangkok, and then go on to the furthest places in search of something the modern world can give. This is the story of There Are Still Places, my new novel on sale at Asia Books and on Kindle ebook. It's a tale for a new generation, disillusioned by the promises of the world, wanting to search for their destinies in far-off places.
That's my latest novel. It's about navigating the world. Some of the themes, just like this channel, of trying to understand the news, trying to understand the world, being disillusioned by the promises of the world, and then going to the furthest reaches of the planet. So I think that's about all for today. Thanks for being here. And as always, come again tomorrow, and we'll look at more news. I've always been cautious about going down fighting in someone else's battle, in someone else's parade. Everybody wants you to join up, but we got to be cautious and understand what's really going on. We know both the right and the left are trying to rope us in, so let's be cautious. I will see you tomorrow.